Have you ever felt that the moment you stopped chasing, everything suddenly changed? Not slowly, not gently, suddenly. The person who once kept their distance started acting different. Their silence felt louder, their presence felt closer, and deep inside, you knew something wasn't normal, because this didn't happen when you were giving your all. It didn't happen when you were overthinking every message. It didn't happen when you were trying to prove your worth. It happened when you became quiet, when you pulled your energy back, when you stopped needing them, and now you're left wondering, why? Why do they move closer when you finally step away? Why do they change when you become strong? Stay with this till the end, because what you're about to understand is powerful. It will change the way you see their behavior forever. And more importantly, it will protect your peace in ways you didn't even know you needed. Because this is not random. This is not coincidence. This is psychology. There's a shift that happens when you grow. Not the kind of growth people can see on the outside, but the silent kind. The kind where you stop explaining yourself. The kind where you stop chasing validation. The kind where your energy becomes calm, controlled, and distant. And when that shift happens, people feel it, especially avoidant people. At first, everything felt predictable to them. They knew your patterns. They knew you would reach out. They knew you would try again, even when they pulled away. That gave them comfort. That gave them control. Because when someone knows you will always come back, they never feel the risk of losing you. But then something changed. You stopped reacting the same way. You didn't chase like before. You didn't beg for attention. You didn't try to fix what they were breaking. And in that moment, something inside them shifted. Because now, they can't read you. And what they don't understand, they start to fear. This is the part no one talks about. Avoidant people don't just run from others. They run from anything that makes them feel emotionally exposed. They avoid situations where they don't feel in control. So when you were always there, always trying, always reaching, they felt safe in their distance. But when you became strong, when you became emotionally independent, you unknowingly stepped out of their control. And that's where everything begins to change. Because your strength is not just attractive, it is threatening to them. Not in a loud way, not in an obvious way, but deep inside. Your calmness challenges their chaos. Your silence challenges their assumptions. Your strength reminds them that they can actually lose you. And that thought is uncomfortable for them. So they start watching you differently. They start thinking differently. They start feeling something they're not used to feeling. Uncertainty. For the first time, they don't know what you're going to do next. Will you come back? Will you stay distant? Will you finally walk away? And that uncertainty creates pressure because control is slipping. And when control starts slipping, people don't always walk away immediately. Sometimes they react, but not in the way you expect. Not with honesty, not with clarity, but with something much more subtle. Something that looks like interest, but feels confusing. Because now, they are trying to understand your new version, the version that doesn't chase, the version that doesn't break easily, the version that can actually leave. And this is where most people get pulled back in. Because when someone who once ignored you starts showing attention, it feels special. It feels like progress. It feels like they finally see your worth. But what you don't realize is, this shift didn't come from love. It came from your strength. And that changes everything, because the moment you stop being predictable, you become powerful. And power always gets a reaction. So if you've been feeling like something changed the moment you stepped back, you're not imagining it. You're finally seeing the truth. And this is just the beginning. What you're witnessing now is not emotion rising. It is control slipping. When someone has built their comfort around distance, they quietly depend on a pattern. That pattern is simple. They withdraw, you move closer, they go silent, you try harder. Over time, this cycle becomes normal to them. It creates a sense of safety, even if it looks cold from the outside. Because in that rhythm, they always know what happens next. But the moment that rhythm breaks, their inner world becomes unstable. You didn't argue. You didn't demand answers. You didn't try to force closeness. Instead, you chose stillness. You chose self-respect. and without saying anything, you removed yourself from the role they were used to. Now they are standing in unfamiliar territory. Human psychology works in a very specific way. The brain is wired to seek certainty. It wants patterns, repetition, predictability. When something becomes uncertain, the mind starts searching for ways to restore balance. This is not about love. This is about discomfort. For an avoidant person, closeness feels overwhelming, but losing control feels even worse. This is the contradiction. They push people away to feel safe, but when someone actually stops coming back, that safety disappears, because now they are no longer choosing distance. Distance is choosing them, and that changes everything inside them. Their thoughts begin to shift. They start replaying moments. They begin to notice your absence in ways they never noticed your presence. Not because they suddenly became deeply emotional, but because your energy is no longer feeding the dynamic they relied on. You have to understand this clearly. When you were always available, your value was invisible to them. Not because you lacked worth, but because consistency without boundaries often gets taken for granted. The human mind adapts quickly to what it receives without effort. But when that availability disappears, attention follows. Now they are trying to figure you out. Why are you quiet? Why are you not reacting? Why are you not reaching out? These questions start building pressure inside them, and pressure always seeks release. This is where their behavior begins to change. Not in a direct way, not in a clear, honest expression, but in subtle actions that create confusion. Because they are not trying to connect deeply, they are trying to regain emotional balance. And the fastest way to do that is to pull you back into the old pattern. Think about it. If they can get you to react again, if they can make you chase again, if they can make you doubt your strength, then everything goes back to normal for them. That is why your growth feels uncomfortable to them. Because your growth forces them to face something they have been avoiding within themselves. It reflects their inability to stay present. It highlights their fear of emotional depth. And instead of dealing with that discomfort, they try to shift the focus back onto you. This is not conscious manipulation all the time. Sometimes it is automatic, a learned response, a defense mechanism built over years. But the impact remains the same. They begin to move in ways that are hard to understand. One moment, there is attention. Another moment, there is distance again. One moment, it feels like they care. Another moment, it feels like nothing changed. This push and pull is not random. It is the result of inner conflict. Part of them feels the loss of control. Another part of them fears getting too close, so they stay in the middle, close enough to keep you attached, far enough to protect themselves. And this is where many people lose their progress, because this behavior creates hope. Hope that things are finally improving. Hope that they are opening up. Hope that this time will be different. But hope without clarity becomes a trap. Because while you are trying to understand their mixed signals, they are trying to restore their comfort. And comfort for them has never been built on deep connection. It has been built on distance with access. Access to you without full responsibility. That is why your strength disrupts everything. You are no longer easy to reach. You are no longer easy to read. You are no longer easy to control. And when someone loses that sense of control, their mind starts looking for ways to bring it back. Not through honesty, not through vulnerability, but through behavior that pulls you emotionally. This is where awareness becomes your power. Because once you understand that their actions are driven by discomfort, not transformation, you stop taking things personally. You stop thinking, maybe they changed. You start realizing they are reacting. And there is a big difference between those two. Real change is consistent. Real growth is stable. Real connection does not leave you confused. But reaction is temporary. It fades the moment control is restored. So if you're noticing a shift in their energy after you became stronger, you are not imagining it. You are witnessing a psychological response to your growth. And this understanding is important, because without it, you may mistake reaction for intention. You may confuse attention with care. You may fall back into a cycle you already outgrew. But with this awareness, everything becomes clear. You stop chasing explanations. You stop seeking validation. You start seeing patterns for what they truly are. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. which means now you are no longer playing the same game, and that is exactly what makes you powerful. And once you recognize that pattern, something even more important reveals itself. The final move. This is the part that feels the most real, the most convincing, the most dangerous. Because just when you think you understand what is happening, they shift again. Not away this time, but toward you. Messages begin to appear. Small efforts start showing up. A different tone, a softer approach, a presence that feels almost new. It catches you off guard, because this version of them is not what you remember. This version feels attentive. This version feels interested. And for a moment, it feels like everything you wanted is finally happening. But this is where awareness becomes critical, because what looks like connection on the surface can carry a completely different intention underneath. This is not a clear return with purpose. This is not a stable step towards something real. This is a test, a quiet, calculated attempt to see if they can still reach you emotionally. They don't come back with direct answers. They don't explain their past behavior. They don't take responsibility in a meaningful way. Instead, they offer just enough to pull your attention back. A message that feels personal. A gesture that feels thoughtful. A moment that feels different, but it never becomes consistent. And that inconsistency is not accidental. It is part of the pattern, because if they give too much, they risk losing their comfort zone. If they give too little, they risk losing access to you. So they stay in between, close enough to keep your focus, distant enough to protect themselves. This is what creates confusion. You start questioning your own judgment. Maybe they are trying. Maybe they need time. Maybe this is progress. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to lean back in. This is the dirty trick. Not something loud or obvious, but something subtle and effective. They don't pull you back with force. They pull you back with possibility. Possibility that things could be better. Possibility that they are finally changing. Possibility that this time it might work. And the human mind is deeply affected by possibility, because when something feels incomplete, the brain tries to finish the story. It wants closure. It wants resolution. So when they reappear in this new way, your mind starts filling the gaps. You begin to imagine outcomes that haven't happened. You begin to attach meaning to actions that are not consistent. You begin to invest again emotionally. And this is exactly what they are trying to see. Are you still reachable? Can they still affect you? Can they still bring you back into the dynamic they understand? Because if the answer is yes, everything resets. Not immediately, not obviously, but gradually. The same cycle begins to rebuild. Attention followed by distance. Interest followed by silence. Moments of closeness followed by emotional withdrawal. And you find yourself back in a place you already fought to leave. That is why this stage feels so intense, because it mixes truth with illusion. There may be moments that feel genuine. There may be actions that seem real, but without consistency, without clarity, without accountability, those moments do not build anything lasting. They only create emotional movement, and emotional movement can feel like progress, even when it leads nowhere. This is why many people get stuck here. Because it doesn't feel like the beginning anymore. It feels deeper. It feels more meaningful. But in reality, it is the same pattern wearing a different face. And recognizing this requires strength. Not physical strength, not loud confidence, but quiet awareness. The ability to step back and observe instead of reacting. The ability to notice behavior instead of believing words. The ability to stay grounded even when emotions are being pulled. Because once you see this clearly, the illusion starts to fade. You stop focusing on what they say. You start focusing on what they consistently do. You stop chasing moments. You start valuing stability. And most importantly, you stop confusing attention with intention. This is where control shifts completely. Because the moment you no longer respond to inconsistency, the pattern loses its power. And when the pattern loses its power, the dynamic cannot continue in the same way. That is why this final move exists. It is not about building something new. It is about restoring something old. And if you are not aware, it works. But if you see it for what it is, it fails. and that changes everything moving forward. And when that pattern loses its grip, a new space opens in your life, a space where you finally get to choose, not react, not chase, not guess, but choose. This is the moment most people never reach because it requires something deeper than emotion. It requires clarity, the kind of clarity that does not come from what someone says, but from what you have learned through experience. You have seen the cycle, you have felt the confusion, you have lived through the uncertainty, and now, standing at this point, you are no longer the same person who once tried to fix everything. You understand something powerful now. Not every connection is meant to grow. Not every return is meant to be accepted. Not every effort deserves your energy. And that understanding changes your direction, because for the first time your focus shifts from them to yourself. You begin to ask different questions. Does this bring me peace? Does this feel stable? Does this align with the person I am becoming? These questions are important because they guide your decisions from a place of strength, not emotion. And when your decisions come from strength, your life starts to change. You stop tolerating confusion, you stop accepting inconsistency. You stop waiting for someone else to become ready. Instead, you become firm in what you allow. This does not mean you become cold. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you start respecting your own boundaries. And boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They protect your energy. They protect your time. They protect your growth. Without them, you fall back into old patterns. With them, you move forward with purpose. This is where real power lives. Not in controlling others, not in trying to change someone, but in controlling your response. Because once you master your response, no one can pull you into a situation that does not serve you. Think about how far you have come. There was a time when silence made you anxious. There was a time when distance made you chase. There was a time when mixed signals made you overthink. But now, you see things differently. Silence gives you clarity. Distance gives you perspective. Uncertainty gives you information. And that information helps you make better choices. You are no longer reacting blindly. You are observing carefully. And observation leads to awareness. Awareness leads to control. Control leads to freedom. This is the transformation. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. But it is real. Because the strongest version of you is not the one who holds on tighter. It is the one who knows when to let go. And letting go is not losing. It is choosing yourself over confusion. It is choosing peace over chaos. It is choosing growth over repetition. That choice is not easy. There will be moments when old feelings try to return. There will be moments when you question your decision. There will be moments when the past feels familiar and comfortable. But comfort is not always healthy. Sometimes comfort is just something you are used to. And growth requires stepping away from what feels familiar into what is actually better for you. This is where discipline becomes important. Not discipline in action, but discipline in emotion. The ability to stay steady even when something tries to pull you back. The ability to stay focused even when distractions appear. The ability to stay true to your path no matter what. Because every time you choose yourself, you reinforce your strength. Every time you walk away from confusion, you build clarity. Every time you protect your peace, you grow. And over time, this becomes your new normal. You no longer seek validation from unstable situations. You no longer depend on uncertain connections. You no longer lose yourself trying to hold on to something unclear. Instead, you become grounded. You become calm. You become certain. And certainty is powerful, because when you are certain about what you deserve, you stop accepting less. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop making excuses for behavior that does not match your standards. You simply move forward. And moving forward does not mean forgetting everything. It means learning from it. It means taking the lessons, the awareness, the growth, and using them to build a better future. A future where you are not stuck in cycles. A future where your energy is valued. A future where your peace is not constantly tested. This is the reward of staying strong, not proving anything to someone else, but proving to yourself that you can choose better. And once you reach this point, something shifts permanently. You are no longer available for confusion. You are no longer attracted to instability. You are no longer affected by inconsistent behavior because you have outgrown it. And when you outgrow something, it no longer has power over you. That is freedom, not from them, but from the pattern itself. And that is where your real life begins.